Alright, we will finish splitting this crankcase on this Honda MT125. We've kind of lubricated everything here to try to get it off a little bit easier. I'm going to use a crowbar in behind here. You're going to make sure you don't get into this gasket surface. If you take and pry right here, you're going to damage this gasket surface. So just be careful doing that. That gear just pops right off of there. We've already removed all these Phillips holding that on. And you can see there why we were being held up. They've got kind of rust all over the place. Snap ring pliers here. Grab this snap ring here, and as well as on the oil pump gear. Lift those off of there. We can take and lift this off as well. And it's kind of a hard spot because you pry on one side, it doesn't want to move up. So a lot of times if you grab a pick or something, you can lift up on the other side. You can pull up pretty even if you've got something lifting on this side as well. If you're just lifting on one side, a lot of times it'll bind and not come off of there. Alright, we're able to get that gear pulled off, and then these two were kind of touching each other, and we're going to have some pieces probably. Well, I guess not. There's your Kickstarter gear here, and this mechanism here is rusty. We're going to have to clean that all up, see if we can get that in good condition again. Oil pump gear there, it's a plastic gear. Pull that snap ring plier, and then this gear should come off of there. And that shaft too, that connects to the oil pump on the other side. Then we've got your speedometer gear, your tack gear that runs down here. This, you just push up out of there if we can. And we can just lift up on this gear and that'll pull right out of there. So if you remember taking that off the top of that motor. All right, we got our shift mechanism here. We've got a spring down right there, so you want to be careful, watch your face when you're pulling this apart. We've already removed in the last video this 10mm nut there, holding that arm on there. Lift that up, there's your arm there. And then we've also got another 12mm down here with this. You see this roller that might be, it's got a little bit of movement there, but not a whole lot. See if we can pull that arm. There we go. There's that arm mount there, and then the gear with the roller, there's this arm with the roller here. We'll lift out of there with a pick. And we've got some debris, like I said earlier in the videos. This cover is sat open for a while, but that's kind of showing us. I'm giving you a good idea how to tear this apart even when it's rusty. A lot of these this year are rusty, just from sitting. Water gets in there. Here's a spring here. That spring will just lift off of there. Again, watch your face. There's that spring for that's for that shift mechanism there. And then this gear here, I think we're going to be able to pull it out the other side with the bearing. And we might, I'm not totally sure on that. Generally, you'd be able to lift at least this gear and this is going to come off here. There we go. So that shift gear came off of there. These are spring loaded, these plates here. We'll remove all this, clean it all up so we can reassemble it. But a lot of this we can reuse. Now I know it kind of looks surprising based off the point we are now, but once you clean these up, you soak them really good. A lot of them will clean up very, very nicely. This cup here, I don't know, we might just wait on this. We split that case. We might be able to pull it out with the bearing. Working on that shift or that Kickstarter mechanism now. Looks like there's a holder in here, but you might just have to wait until we get that split apart as well. I'm going to show you how to remove this piston. I didn't do that on the last video, but grab a pick or a small screwdriver, go in here to where this circlip runs through, or this pin runs through, grab a circlip, and then you can just kind of pop it off of there. And I like to put my thumb over top of it, that way that pin doesn't go, or that circlip doesn't go flying. But if you're using a pick, you want to make sure you don't stab yourself. If you're ordering a new piston, these with a pin and everything, these circlips will generally come with a kit if you're ordering it from an aftermarket company. If you're ordering it stock, these clips will not come with it. So pull that clip out there, and there it is there. And then you can take and push this pin out. And again, on these older ones, sometimes can be a challenge. This one's not so easy or not so difficult. If it is being a challenge, you want to make sure you put something in behind that crank so you're not, or in behind the piston so that you're not beating directly on that crank. Obviously the crank on this one's bad, but we're going to just keep everything together. We're going to run that bearing here through, tap it in, take that circlip. I like to turn it so it clips this way, opening is that way. Slip it in there on one side, into the groove, get it down as far as you can, then I take a pick then and push it down the rest of the way. So then there's your clips kept with, that circlip's kept with everything. Now we're going to flip this motor over. We've got a handful of Phillips screws to remove. And again, I've loosened these Phillips screws just so it doesn't take as much time. We've got an impact driver that does a really good job of removing them. There's 5 underneath that stator. Alright, I counted 13 there. So 13 on this side, we'll pull them out because when we flip that motor over, they'll all dump out anyways. If I'm putting this motor right back together, what I do is I'll find a spot to start. So I'll start with that motor, maybe facing directly at me. I'll start and I'll take out this one. I'll set it here. Take out this next one, set it there. Take out the third one, set it there. Go all the way around so that I know immediately after. If I'm putting this motor back together right away, that's what I'll do. That way it's just real quick. Replace whatever I need to replace in there. Otherwise, you got to stick them in there and determine the length. Make sure they're not too long. If one you feel is right and then you get to another one is too long, then you got to take back out those other ones. So if you just put it in order there, that saves you some time. And I like to take a rubber mallet then and find a good spot. This isn't a really good just because it's not very thick. You don't want to tap on that very much. May end up having to, but this area is thick here. We can take and tap on that. You can see it kind of broke it free there. And I like to hang on one side. All right, it's still coming free. I'm gonna flip this over, make sure we're not missing anything. You could tap on that shaft there. We might do that next. Alright, we're getting it split apart there. Once we're so far, when you can get your fingers in there, that speeds the process up a lot because you can kind of wiggle it back and forth, but we're not quite there yet. I can't get my fingers in, so we'll hang on to this side. My hammer's falling apart here. Hang on to this side. A lot of these hammers are steel on the inside, so you want to make sure if this is falling apart, you're not slamming against some of these parts with a steel hammer on the inside. So I think we've got it far enough where we can get our fingers in there. But we may not be far enough to get it apart yet. I can take a little bit of this. I don't know what's holding this up there. There's a cotter pin or a Woodruff key on this stator on the flywheel that runs through there. That's not holding this up, but it's certainly this seal here is pushing the other way. I'm not totally sure why it was coming out there. If it's just the banging that does that, but I got a couple more taps, I think. And there goes my hammer. So I'm going to use the edge of my hammer here. Kind of use that corner. And just takes a little bit of time. This crank is not good. We know that. So we could actually, if worst comes to worst, we could tap on that. A lot of times you're taking these motors apart for the crank. So if the crankshaft isn't good, you could actually just take a steel hammer and tap on the crank. I was going to try to do it, show you how to do it if everything is in good condition, but they do make crankcase splitters, and they work for a lot of crankcases, but there's just a lot of crankcases that they don't work for, just for the size that they are. Once you get this far, I like to keep the motor tipped up because all these gears then are hopefully going to stay in one spot, rather than if you're flipping it back and forth or holding it straight up and down. A lot of times those gears will just fall to pieces in there, and then you've got more work cut out for you putting them back together. So if you can kind of keep them in a general idea, just compare it on the microfiche where they were. That saves a lot of time. I'm going to use a steel hammer because I feel like we're just stuck on that crank shaft there. Okay, crankshaft is free. I don't know what we're hitting on there, but now I'm going to have to do what I just told you I try not to do, and that's take it apart this way, because we're actually holding up on this sprocket gear where that countershaft sprocket sits. So maybe I'll try. Maybe I should have tried that earlier to try to keep that in there. I'm going to tap directly on the center to try to trying to keep everything together still. That way when you go back together, there we go. So that shaft ended up staying in there. So we've got some rust issues there that's caused that. So we've got some gears to put back together here. Here's shift fork, and here's another shift fork. We've got this gear. And you know, I've just got some work cut out for me to put these back together, but this assembly stayed together for the most part. And here's your shift drum here. So pulling that out, that cap stayed on there, but we kind of had to wiggle it to the right spot. There's grooves in this case here that allowed us to do that. So this, and we know that this is in the right direction, but you want to make sure that this washer there gets put in the right place. So we'll go ahead and we're going to tap this out with a rubber mallet. Guess we didn't do that. And then our Kickstarter here, what you do is spring that runs all the way through that shaft. A lot of times these have a spacer here. That's not the case. So we're going to take and lift this off, this spring off this. And we spun it off of there. Now we're going to be able to push that Kickstarter mechanism through that other way. And you've got this spring-loaded arm here that kicks out to engage that Kickstarter gear. So that is, and taking that crank out, rubber mallet on this side, or steel hammer in the case that this shaft is bad. So we'll go ahead and finish those pieces there, but thanks for watching.